True creepy disturbing phone call horror story. I had just gotten home from work around 9 p.m., and I had barely had time to get my shoes off when I got a phone call from some number I didn't recognize. I was in the midst of searching for new jobs and thought that it might be one of the places that I was applying to calling me back. I picked up the call, and it was some guy who claimed to be from a third-party detention center where low-risk inmates were held whenever the local jails were busy or filled. That should have raised a red flag for me, but for some reason, it just made sense in my tired brain. I was getting ready to tell this guy that I'm not interested in making a donation or anything like that when he asked if this is my full name. I confirmed, and he said they were holding my boyfriend at this center, mentioning my boyfriend's full name and giving a dead-on description of him. I asked what was going on because my boyfriend was supposed to be at work right now, and the guy on the other end provided an explanation. He claimed that my boyfriend had struck a pregnant woman with his car on his way to work and was 4 times the legal limit for blood alcohol. He said the woman was in critical condition, and my boyfriend had broken a few ribs and his nose in the accident. I freaked out at this point and asked if I could speak to my boyfriend, to which the man obliged. I was put on hold for a minute or two before my boyfriend picked up the line. This person on the other end was panicking, saying how it wasn't his fault and begged me not to tell his parents. Again using my name. It didn't particularly sound like my boyfriend, but I figured it was because of the broken nose he supposedly had, and his tone really helped to sell it, making it all sound so legitimate. The man from before came back online before I could ask any questions and explained that they had to sedate my boyfriend since he had begun to panic and hyperventilate, and I was starting to relate to that more and more by the second. The man on the other end told me that I should come right away and that the bail is set at $2,000 cash only. Stupidly, I told him that I don't have that much and that I might have half of that. He reassured me that it's fine and that I can work something out with the front office once I get there, trying to calm me down. My hands were shaking so badly, and tears were welling up as I tried to hold back my emotions. Suddenly, the door opened, and in walked my boyfriend, completely normal looking with no broken nose, but more than a little confused as to why I'm crying. I was still on the phone with the man and asked him what the heck he thinks he's doing, telling him how my boyfriend just walked in, and he promptly hung up. I tried calling back a few times, but it went directly to voicemail. I later found out that the power to the bar my boyfriend works at had gone out, so his boss sent everyone home early. I had never been so grateful for a power outage. My boyfriend slept on the couch to keep watch. But unfortunately, I still couldn't sleep that night, so I decided to look up the name of the organization the man said he worked for. Big surprise, that turned up nothing. I then looked up the address he had given me on Google Maps and saw that it was some random abandoned strip mall in the middle of a sketchy area about an hour and a half out of town. What really freaked me out about this whole thing was that the guy knew my number, both mine and my boyfriend's names, but didn't sound like anyone we had met before. I have no idea what would have been waiting for me there, but I'm counting my lucky stars right now. That incident reminded me of something that happened almost 10 years ago when I was 18. I had a phone call that completely changed my life. I got woken up at almost 6 a.m. by an unknown number. I figured it was my boyfriend, now husband, since his phone usually showed up as the famous unknown number. He usually called me before going to work at around 7:30 a.m., but sometimes he'd call me at 6-ish if he wanted to talk to me while waking up. I answered, and he said, "Hey baby," and I was still half asleep but started talking. He told me he had a little problem and that he was feeling really, being 18 and having started dating him recently. Let's just say I was very willing to, So, we started talking, and he described how much he loved seeing me last weekend, how good I looked, and how he loved my hot red panties. He basically detailed what we had done during the weekend. If I remember properly, his parents weren't home for the weekend, so we had the house and the car to drive around, and we had lots of fun, obviously. He also mentioned how much he loved some of the things I did to him. I replied, becoming more awake, and we were having a really good time. Then I noticed it was almost 7 a.m., the time he usually takes his shower, eats, and gets ready to go out the door, and basically asked him, "So, this is fun and all, but aren't you going to get ready for work?" Typing this gives me chills, but he replied, "No, I think I'll skip work today. What about I come over?" Now, the thing is, by then, I was pretty awake, and although the voice that was talking to me was very similar to my boyfriend's, something threw me off. My boyfriend doesn't say no like that. Besides, I knew that unless he was sick, my boyfriend would never skip work because he was scheduled on shifts, and missing his shift was a big deal that could get him fired. I kind of froze. He noticed it, so he said, "Oh babe, you're right, I should start getting dressed. So, you want me to come over?" By then, I swear his voice was back to my boyfriend's voice, and I just felt silly. So, what if he wanted to skip a day at work? Maybe he just wanted to see me. So, I told him, "Yeah, sure, come over. It will only be us here." He replied, "Great," and then he asked, "Where is it?" Wait, what? My boyfriend knows where I live. He had been coming over for weeks now. I laughed it off and told him, "Ha, you know where it is." That's when he laughed, and his laugh was absolutely not my boyfriend's laugh. I instantly told him, "You are not my boyfriend, are you?" He said, "Can you just hang on, please? I need to go grab something." Meanwhile, I got a text from my boyfriend. I figured that maybe this is just a sick joke. Maybe he coordinated it perfectly. Maybe he's sick, and his voice doesn't sound the same. The text from my boyfriend said, "At the subway, going to work now, love you." I texted him back, saying, "Why are you texting me? We are talking right now." At which point, my actual boyfriend called. He was very confused at first and figured someone had hacked into his phone when I told him it was by phone. He reassured me that he absolutely did not call me and that whoever it was not him. He had to go, as the subway train was there, but he said he would call as soon as he was at work. Then the other guy called back. I picked up and asked him, "Who are you? What do you want?" I pretty much went crazy on him. He said that his name was Mike, that we had met a long time ago, which was impossible because my phone number was fairly recent, and that he just wanted to have fun, that he didn't know I had a boyfriend. I asked him how he knew what I was wearing and what we did and how he got my phone number. He just said, "Where are you? Why don't we meet?" At which point, I hung up. He called again. I didn't answer. Within minutes, I had called my mom to tell her what happened. She told me to change my phone number and not to stay home alone. I changed my phone number right away, and I also alerted the local police. They opened a file, but nothing ever came out of it. I still wonder how he knew what we did and what I was wearing. My boyfriend swore at the time he would never let any of his friends know all that, but his parents' house did have lots of windows, and we weren't exactly careful. I'm the youngest of 5, with my siblings being 5, 6, 7, and 8 years older than me. So, there were times when my parents were out of the house, and my siblings, one or more, were left to kind of watch me. I was 10 years old, and it was just me and my 16-year-old sister, Dawn, at the house. This took place in the summer of 1981. The phone rang, and I answered it. The caller, who sounded very cheerful, immediately asked for my parents by their first and last names. I remember thinking he sounded familiar, Like maybe one of my dad's coworkers or something. Anyway, I told him that they weren't home, and he sounded genuinely sad about it. He told me that my parents had agreed to collect some items for him, bag them in brown grocery bags, and leave them on the porch. They actually used to do this with clothes and such for charities. So thus far, everything was making sense. After telling him, "All right," he then asked if I could write down the list of things he needed. I grabbed the small pad of paper and pencil we kept by the phone and told him I could. He started out with a few normal items, I assume, since I don't remember what they were, and then he stopped and asked me, "What's your favorite color?" Well, I was 10 and a girly girl, so I said, "Purple." And he responded, "Oh, do you think that's a bit too much for little girls' silk panties?" I furrowed my brow, thinking it was a bit odd, but just answered, "No, I guess not." He told me to put it on the list. He then gave me a few more items and said, "Now, this part is really important, okay? Are you ready?" I told him that I was, and he said, "I need 8 baby bottles of sperm." As you can imagine, I was sitting there writing in my 10-year-old handwriting, and I got to the word sperm, and I'm like, there's something not right about that word. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew it was not something someone should be asking a kid for. I told him to wait a minute, set the phone down, and ran into Dawn's room. She was lying on her bed, reading a magazine, and I told her what he said. She literally leaped off the bed, shouting, "What?" and ran into the den. She grabbed the phone and was shouting, "Hello, hello," over and over. Of course, the creep had hung up. When my parents got home, I told them what happened and showed them the list. They were sufficiently creeped out, but this was before caller ID and other such tools. I told them his voice sounded familiar enough that if I heard it, I'd recognize it, and that I thought he might work with my dad or something. Other than that, there was not much else to do. At Christmas, Mom and I were decorating the tree, and the phone rang. I was standing right by it, so I turned and picked it up. It was the same man, and he just said, "Merry Christmas." Unfortunately, I panicked and just slammed the phone down. I still wish I would have calmly handed it to my mom because she might have recognized who it was, and my dad would have been happy to take care of the situation. I didn't, though, and as far as I know, he never called back again. I will never ever forget that happening to me, and now, all these years later, I still think I would recognize his voice. While I don't actually want to meet him as an adult, I'd like to punch him in the face.